Let me put on some music. So this is, there we go. So we got a vertical stream and we got that. Okay, perfect. Oh, whoops. All right, let's scroll up. We are going to talk about real world assets, something not new that we've talked about on here. But this is a Chainlink article where they explain it. A little under a year old. All right, let's scroll up. There we go. We are going to talk about real world assets. Okay, so real world assets in blockchain are digital tokens that represent physical and traditional financial assets such as currencies, commodities, equities, and bonds. As we know, these are real world assets, just as they said, that are brought on chain, that have something on chain that represent that object. So while that object might not be physically digital, while a house is not necessarily on the blockchain, the deed, the data of that house and other aspects of that house would be on chain as a real world asset, which could then be bought, sold, transacted, traded, you name it, anywhere at any time across the world. On the blockchain, the deed real world asset tokenization is one of the largest opportunities in the blockchain industry, with the potential market size in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. In theory, anything of value can be tokenized and brought on chain. Very true. Any asset, as long as it has a digital representation, is going to be considered on chain. One of the most in-depth real world assets that's out there right now are US dollar stablecoins. Again, stablecoins are tokenized representations of US dollars on chain. You could look at this as USDT, US dollar tether, USDC, US dollar coin. And so these are some of the most abundant real world assets on chain currently. Stablecoins are this is why tokenized RWAs are a growing market segment in the digital asset industry, with an increasing number of projects looking to tokenize a wide variety of assets, including cash, commodities, real estate, and much more. In this article, we'll explain what tokenized RWAs are, how they are created, and how Chainlink is the only platform that can provide a comprehensive solution for fulfilling the requirements of tokenized assets. What are real-world assets? RWAs, or tokenized real-world assets, are blockchain-based digital tokens that represent physical and traditional financial assets such as cash, commodities, equities, bonds, credit, artwork, and intellectual property. Again, it can be anything that is represented on the blockchain by a digital token. As such, as we've said, cash is the number one right now. There's multiple forms of cash that is tokenized on the blockchain, especially outside of US dollars. So not only do you have US dollar that's tokenized on the blockchain as stablecoins, DAI, USDC, USDT, but you also have euros, yen, and many other currencies that are attempting to be tokenized and put on blockchains to digitize the dollars. The tokenization of RWAs marks a significant shift in how these assets can be accessed, exchanged, and managed, unlocking an array of new opportunities for both blockchain-powered financial services and a wide variety of non-financial use cases underpinned by cryptography and decentralized consensus. Asset tokenization is among the most promising use cases for blockchain technology, with its potential market size encompassing nearly all human economic activity. Now, why do they say this? The reason that asset tokenization can be seen as possibly encompassing all human activity is because think of all transaction-based technology that is used today, anything that is used to exchange goods, anything that is used to purchase goods, anything that is used to transact, all of that can be brought on chain. And so that is why there is no line in the sand for where this has to stop. Bringing tokens or bringing real world assets on chain and tokenizing those assets could be done with anything, anywhere in the world. Even something as small as this Game Boy. If I really wanted to put my ownership of this Game Boy on the blockchain, I would make a token out there that, we would call it Brandon's Game Boy. There would only be one of this token. It would be an NFT, so a non-fungible token. Non-fungible meaning there is nothing else like it. And we could sell this on the blockchain. Let's say there's an eBay like app on Ethereum. We could put that token on the blockchain and I could sell that token. The terms of that token could say whoever is the holder of this token owns this Game Boy and is entitled to receiving this Game Boy via mail. And so then we could auction off that token, and whoever has that token would then have full ownership of that Game Boy. And then it would be my obligation to send that Game Boy out to whatever address specified. The future of finance is on-chain, and it's likely to feature hundreds of blockchains supporting trillions of dollars of tokenized RWAs on a common substrate consisting of blockchain and distributed ledger technology, base networks connected by a universal interoperability standard. As we've talked before, CCIP is Chainlink's cross-chain interoperability protocol. With CCIP, you are going to need a way for all these different chains to communicate with one another. And now if all these different chains have many real-world assets, you can assume that those assets are not going to stay put on those individual blockchains. So you're going to need a protocol, in this case CCIP, to be able to talk and translate between different blockchains to allow these real-world assets to move freely between these different chains, and thus making real-world assets would thus be made blockchain agnostic, right? You don't want them staying stationary on a blockchain because different countries, different companies, even different assets may have different chains that they reside and operate on. But to have those different chains be able to interact with one another, to provide liquidity to different markets and use different applications, you are going to need something to allow those chains to communicate. Tokenizing real-world assets. Tokenizing real-world assets involves representing the ownership rights of assets on-chain tokens. In this process, a digital representation of the underlying asset is created, enabling on-chain management of the asset's ownership rights and helping to bridge the gap between physical and digital assets. Tokenized assets benefit from enhanced liquidity, increased access, transparent on-chain management, and reduced transactional friction compared to traditional assets. In the case of financial assets, the tokenization of RWAs also consolidates the distribution, trading, clearing, settlement, and safekeeping processes into a single layer, enabling a more streamlined on-chain financial system with decreased counterparty risk where capital can be more efficiently mobilized. Okay, this is where we get really deep into the good stuff is how do we tokenize these assets? What's the process? And so the high-level process of tokenizing real-world assets involves several steps. The first step is identifying the asset itself, and so this would be known as asset selection, determining the real-world asset to be tokenized. Once we've determined what asset we want to have tokenized, we then need to identify what token specifications that we want to use, because there are many different there's many different token specifications out there. Think of it like token protocols. You have token protocols for fungible tokens, for non-fungible tokens, for more modern tokens. So there's many different token specifications that can be selected. But really, we need to identify, is this going to be a fungible or non-fungible token? Fungible meaning that there are many of the same token that can be interchanged with one another that don't impact the token itself. So think of it as US dollar. Right? It doesn't matter if you have the first minted or the 100th minted US dollar. They're both going to do the same thing. They both have the same value. They both represent the same thing. So that would be a fungible token. But again, for a non-fungible token, you could have one that represents a blue Game Boy, one that represents a green Game Boy, and all these different Game Boys could have signatures on them, whatever, but they have something that makes them different, and thus you would need a non-fungible token because one Game Boy does not equal another Game Boy. They're each different in their own regard. So once we've selected the asset and once we've selected the token specification that we're going to use, we then need to identify what blockchain we want to put this on. Is it a public blockchain? Is it a private blockchain? If it's a public blockchain, which public blockchain are we going to use? Are we going to use something like Ethereum? Are we going to use something that's more gas efficient like Polygon? It really comes down to what we need from these chains when bringing our assets on chain. And while CCIP might break down these barriers for transacting across blockchains, we really want to make sure that the base blockchain has all these specifications and is able to maintain our real world asset as we are intending it to live on this chain. So choosing the public or private blockchain network on which to issue the token, and CCIP helps make that available on any blockchain. But again, we need to make sure that this blockchain is sound, secure, and going to be reliable for our token. The fourth step is this off-chain connection. By this, it's simply saying that we need to make sure that whatever this connection is that's pointing to this real-world asset, this off-chain connection that, again, let's say we're bringing this token on-chain. Number one, how are we verifying that that asset really exists? How are we going to verify that that Game Boy really does exist, that it's going to be sent to the correct place once it's purchased? But then for other assets, let's say it's treasury bonds or stocks, we need to make sure that those stocks are there, that that company or person has a proof of reserves, a proof that they actually have the capital and the assets that they're saying. But then also all the price information, all the transaction information, all of that off-chain data needs to be reliable, secure, and be able to be brought on-chain. So most tokenized assets require high-quality off-chain data from secure and reliable Chainlink oracles. Using a verification service such as the industry standard Chainlink proof of service, or such as the industry standard Chainlink proof of reserve to verify the assets backing the RWA tokens is essential for maintaining transparency for users. Issuance. Deploying the smart contracts on the chosen network, minting the tokens, and making them available for usage. So once we've identified what chain we want to bring our tokens onto, and once we've identified what data we're going to be using for that token, we need to make a decision on how many tokens are we going to issue and what is our burn method. Issuance or minting is the process of making those tokens, making them available on the blockchain, and then being able to either sell them or give them out. And then burning is getting rid of those tokens. So if two Game Boy Colors tokens were made and the Game Boy broke and that no one wants to own that, that's something that we need to get rid of. We need to burn that token because that asset no longer exists. Real-world assets in DeFi. Let me fix this. Tokenized RWAs have the potential to fundamentally change the landscape of decentralized finance. In many ways, DeFi served as a proof of concept for on-chain finance as a superior technological layer for facilitating financial and economic activity. However, an overwhelming majority of assets are outside of the blockchain ecosystem, yet they could benefit from the technology's advantages. This is why tokenized RWAs are key for growing the digital asset industry by orders of magnitude by letting a majority of assets that are currently not in the blockchain ecosystem be used with blockchain rails. Making the assets that are currently outside of the digital asset ecosystem blockchain enabled will create a financial system with better liquidity conditions, more transparency with decreased systemic risk, and conflict of interest-free infrastructure that enables a more equitable environment where a select few can't take advantages of the system for their own benefit. Where does this liquidity come from? By opening up real-world assets to the blockchains, to public infrastructure, you are making them more liquid, because not only can you buy and sell and transfer these goods more efficiently, you can do it faster as well, but you're also providing access to a broader pool of capital. So if we're going to use public blockchains as an example, putting these tokens on public blockchains is more than just access to the US capital, right? So not only are you putting it on a global infrastructure network, people anywhere across the globe can access this asset via DeFi, but then you can also have access to different blockchains and private capital as well. If you recall, we were talking about banks and having their private chains. These private chains, these banks can move those assets to public chains and thus bring liquidity on chain for assets that they may not have either been privy to or knowledgeable of prior to this interconnection. Additionally, if you've ever tried to wire money or you know how things such as FedWire work, they're very slow processes with clearing, with settlement, and the movement of large money takes quite a long time, right? You don't want mistakes to happen. So they do take their times to make sure transactions occur in a safe and efficient manner. And not that that doesn't occur on a blockchain, but you can send vast amounts of money very quickly and have that settle within 5 minutes on Ethereum. And so all of this can add liquidity super fast, especially when a lot of trades, even in the stock market today, are done by flash bots. These programs that look at, okay, how quickly do I need to buy and sell this asset? Is it trending in a manner that we think we need to sell or buy? And because all of this is already automatically happening via code in the existing market infrastructure, by bringing this on chain, you're now providing not only assets, these programs' ability to see this data and trade, but when they're trading online or currently in Fidelity or Wells Fargo, they're not actually moving the money yet. They're just making those trades, right? Those accounts have the money in them, but they're not settling that money yet. Whereas this is exchanging hands as fast as the transaction takes place, and it is super liquid and reliable. Tokenized real-world assets have been a growing Tokenized real-world assets have been a growing segment of the DeFi ecosystem, with RWA total value locked sitting at $5 billion in December 2023. We could probably even let's go look at DeFi Llama. If we're looking at DeFi Llama, we could probably even look at the USDC value and look at how much is locked in that. But so this is saying that the total RWA value at the end of 2023 was $5 billion. Honestly, let's just do USDC. Is that not there? Let's do USDT. No. Treasuries, what do we want to look for? Let's go to stable coins. Here we go. Stablecoin market cap, right? Stablecoin market cap is currently sitting at 186 billion. We already know that a majority of these stablecoins, now, okay, I'm not going to say a majority, but a lot of these stablecoins are going to be real world assets because they're backed by real world assets. So with everything else excluded, move this over for a second. With everything else excluded, we can see that there is a market cap of nearly 38 billion of USDC. And USDC is backed by government bonds and other short-term assets. So USDC in it of itself is already has more in on-chain real-world assets than is specified in this over a year ago. More than 10 times. No, not as much as 10 times, but what's that? 8? 7? It's ridiculous. It's only growing astronomically, and that's only stable coins. That's not other real-world assets. That's not these big the stocks. It's not housing. It's not including all of these other assets. It's wild. Real-world assets can also help enable novel financial products. For example, MakerDAO, one of the largest DeFi protocols by total value locked, uses a variety of real-world asset collateral to collateralize the stablecoin DAI, which represents a novel way of creating new financial assets using both traditional and blockchain-based assets and technology. I highly recommend go checking out our Maker article at peardoes.substack.com. We have a great article out there where we go over the MakerDAO protocol and DAI. What DAI is a stablecoin that is collateralized by other assets. It is an algorithmic stablecoin, and what this does is it looks at the other price of assets in its reserve, whether that be Ethereum, whether that be USDC. So it could be backed by stablecoins, which are then backed by real world assets. So it really depends, but DAI itself is a stablecoin, and the Maker token, part of the Maker DAO platform, the Maker token acts as a voting token for the protocol, but it also acts as a counterbalance to provide liquidity to the DAI stablecoin. And I'm not going to go into it fully, but I highly suggest going to check out that article so that you can understand how these algorithmic stablecoins work and how different real world assets are being utilized on chain. Let me move this over. There we go. So we talked about this briefly, We talked about this briefly. The benefits of real-world asset tokenization. There are three main benefits. Okay, the number one is liquidity. Again, all these assets, all this liquidity, this cash, this money, stable coins, you name it, can be brought on chain to be bought and sold at high volumes more efficiently and less time restrictions. But also, because you can transact much faster on the blockchain, as we've discussed, you also provide access to a broader pool of investors and people that want to invest in these assets. And so by enabling globally accessible liquidity conditions on a unified substrate, the blockchain ecosystem with cross-chain activity supported by Chainlink's CCIP, tokenized RWAs enable increased market liquidity for traditionally illiquid assets. Excuse me. Again, what this does is this is providing people who would not have access to this access to these assets. Number two is the transparency. Since the tokenized assets are represented on-chain, transparency and auditable asset management are ensured, which decreases overall systemic risks, as the amount of leverage and risk in the entire system can be more accurately determined. All of the data is on-chain. You can see the proof of reserves, or POR. Does this asset really have the reserves that it says? Is it really worth what it's saying? What hands has it passed through? How quickly has it passed through? All these different data points that are hidden behind a wall currently. When brought on-chain, you can see all these different things, even on order book platforms, how it's being bought, sold, matched, you name it, and the proprietary code behind it. And lastly, accessibility. Tokenized RWAs can broaden the potential user base of certain asset types by enabling easier access through blockchain-based applications and allowing a broader set of users to utilize assets that would otherwise be unavailable to them through fractional ownership. Kind of hand in hand with liquidity, by bringing it on these public blockchains, you are providing more access and easier use to access on a global financial system. Navigating the risks of RWA tokenization. Tokenized RWAs also present some risks, mainly on the side of the custody of physical assets, which must be reliably done, and the connection to the outside world. In addition, there's scope for smart contract bugs and vulnerability. Finally, it isn't enough just to issue an asset. There must also be good market liquidity or demand for it in order for it to thrive. I couldn't agree with this more. Just because you bring a token or an asset on chain does not mean that there's a market out there for it. Just because I could tokenize this Game Boy does not mean that there's going to be anyone out there that's going to want to buy this Game Boy, nor is there going to be a market for Game Boys on the blockchain, because that would result in more data being collected, such as address information, such as tax information. So there's a lot of different factors that go into tokenizing real-world assets and making markets for these assets. So it isn't entirely risk-free, as well as, the custody of those physical assets, especially if they're worth a lot of money. And then you get into the weeds of more illiquid real-world assets that, although could be made more liquid than they are today, are still illiquid themselves, like houses, like buying and selling cars. And so logistically, there's a lot of things that need to be worked out, but there is still going to be benefits by bringing them on chain. It just needs to happen in a safe and progressive manner. The Chainlink platform's role in tokenized RWAs. As a decentralized computing platform that has enabled trillions of dollars in transactional value, Chainlink is the only full-featured. Let me switch this for a second. Okay. As a decentralized computing platform that enabled trillions of dollars in transactional value, Chainlink is the only fully featured platform that can solve each of these requirements for tokenized real-world assets while maintaining the high level of security required by financial institutions and capital markets. To realize the full benefits of on-chain finance, tokenized RWAs require three capabilities. They must be able to, number one, be enriched with real-world information, which we know you need this oracle to be. You need an oracle, not this oracle. You need an oracle to be able to go off-chain and grab and pull in this off-chain data on-chain. You need to be securely transferred cross-chain. So you need to not only bring these assets on-chain, but with CCIP, you need to be able to transact across these different chains, from the public chains, from the private chains. And then number three, you need to be able to connect to off-chain data regardless of which chain they're moved to. And again, this is where CCIP comes into play, because if you do bring that data on-chain, you don't want that data just staying with that asset on the chain that it was brought on-chain with. If the asset moves across different chains, you're going to need a way to have that data move with it. If you buy a Mac laptop and you have a Mac laptop for some years, and then in 3 years you buy a new Mac laptop, Mac does a very good job of letting you be able to transfer your files and existing data from your old laptop to your new laptop. But let's say if instead you bought a Microsoft Surface instead of continuing to go with Apple, those are two separate operating systems, and while there are applications out there to help you transfer that data, it is not as easy to transfer it. And so that is one way you can think of these blockchains, is that they're entirely different operating systems. They're entirely two separate computers. And by bringing CCIP between these two blockchains, you're able to transfer that data a lot more efficiently, just as much as if you were to have something like CCIP and say, okay, let me plug it into my new Microsoft laptop to my old Apple laptop. That would help transfer that your data, your old computer, more easily, and that is what CCIP wants to do. Having brought billions of data points on-chain, Chainlink services are the industry standard for enriching RWAs with off-chain data. Some of these services include proof of reserve, which is autonomous, reliable, and timely verifications that enable users, asset issuers, and on-chain applications to monitor the cross-chain or off-chain reserves backing tokenized RWAs. This provides them with the enhanced transparency and enables circuit breakers to be implemented, protecting users if the value of off-chain assets diverges from asset tokenized on-chain. This is super necessary, especially if you're even looking at selling a bucket of assets or selling a bunch of USDC. You want to know that that person doesn't just hold those tokens on chain. You want to make sure that they have it off chain. Additionally, you want to make sure that the price or the value of that asset is exactly what they're saying it is. Establishing secure on-chain identity systems is necessary for banks, asset managers, and their customers to be able to transact with each other. DECO is a privacy-preserving Oracle protocol in development that utilizes zero-knowledge technology. We can go into zero-knowledge at another time, to enable institutions and individuals to prove the provenance and verify the ownership of tokenized RWAs without revealing personal information to third parties. Number 3, data streams and data feeds. Users can underpin on-chain markets with secure and decentralized source of financial market data around commodities, equities, forex, foreign exchange, indices, economic data, business financials, cryptocurrencies, and more. Lastly, you have functions. Any off-chain event or data can be synchronized or published on-chain, such as standing settlement instructions, corporate actions, proxy voting, ESG data, and the like. Once the tokenized RWAs are enriched with real-world data, they need to be able to be moved across blockchains while keeping updated with all relevant information, such as price, identity, and reserves value as they move. Therefore, a secure solution is needed that offers both off-chain and cross-chain connectivity for a wide variety of public and private blockchains. Chainlink is the platform that solves this problem by providing complementary services that span both off-chain data connectivity and cross-chain interoperability. And these are some of the use cases. We've talked about Swift. We've talked about DTCC. ANZ Bank is another bank, Australian bank that has tested CCIP, a Hong Kong-based fintech startup. And so the tokenization of real-world assets presents a massive opportunity for the replatforming of finance into more secure, transparent, and efficient backend infrastructure stack that solves critical conflicts of interest and risk management challenges associated with traditional financial infrastructure. Underpinning the shift is a Chainlink platform, which provides the secure, reliable, and performant services needed to unlock the future of assets. Again, you need a way to bring real-world assets on chain. Real-world assets coming on chain is inevitable, and Chainlink is uniquely positioned to not only help people bring these real-world assets on chain, but then to help bring these real-world assets to the masses, to the world once they're on chain, by providing Oracle services, by providing cross-chain interoperability services, and really helping grow the new Web3, the new financial infrastructure. I got to run. It was fun to hang with y'all this morning. Shout out my one viewer. You know who you are. Love you guys. See you tomorrow.